Hello again. Well, we're back at it again. Setting up the camera to record some more tree filling, pushing over. For some reason, this particular day, both Kernigan and Charlie decided that they wanted to come and see what I was doing, and Kernigan was actually pretty bold in her approaching. Usually she doesn't come anywhere near the tractor while it's running, but it was actually a little bit of a concern because I knew I was pushing down trees and I didn't want to have to worry about where they were. So I had to try and send them home. Someday, in the not too distant future, they'll be able to come and hang out here all they want. This is this has been quite the project this summer, and especially in the last little while, just the push to try and get it done. Because it takes long enough to do this that there's a challenge to it in the amount of time that I have, and it would definitely be nice to have a bigger budget for it, so I could, for instance, rent a bulldozer and an excavator and have it done in one day. That would be pretty sweet, but that'd be a pretty costly expense. So there's still some stuff that's up in the air about how the future will actually go. Whether this will be the house that we end up renting to my brother, or whether we build another one for another spot for him. Whether we're actually toying with the idea that if we're gonna go ahead and get a mortgage for putting this house here, then maybe it's something we need to consider to also include in that the cost of building the barn, so that we have just the house and the barn / garage all ready to go, and we don't have to worry about what structures need to be there. So I don't know. We'll see how things go. So this might be news to some people. It might be old news. But if you haven't heard, and this is news, then there was a pretty significant data breach. Some hackers got into a company that was apparently storing data on pretty much every American. It was an American company, and they were, in my opinion, and this is a kind of a harsh opinion, but in my opinion, they were a bunch of morons that didn't know what they were doing and were in above their head. But they were collecting information on the person, their social security number, their address, their previous addresses, their relatives for like 3 generations, and they didn't have any of it secured at all. So a hacker got in and stole everything, sold it on the black market, dark web, whatever you want to call it. And so one of our banks has a thing where they check for our personal information, and in the last week or two, we've been notified multiple times that our personal information is now online. So that sucks pretty bad. So if you fall in that category, which just about everybody does in America. You should, have a credit freeze unless you're actively seeking credit with someone. You should notify your banks that you'll never do stuff online. You should stop doing stuff online, like opening accounts online. You should always do that in person. Yeah, it's a pretty big deal, but one of the ways you can help protect yourself, like I said, you should, if you're not actively seeking credit, you should put a credit freeze on your accounts, on your credit bureau accounts. So in an effort to help ensure this information is available to everybody who needs it, these are the phone numbers for if you need to call to put a freeze on your credit, which is something that I would personally definitely recommend. The requirement for them is that once you call, or you can also go online to submit this online, but once you put a credit freeze in place, they have 24 hours to actually lock your credit down, and then when you call back to take that off, for instance, if you decide you want to go and apply for a loan, you would call in, and then they are required to have that unfrozen within 1 hour. So I will put that also in the show notes or the description, so that it's readily available there as well. But that's it's pretty crummy that in this day and age, it's a safe bet that essentially if you work with a company that hasn't been hacked yet, it's a guarantee that it's just a matter of time before they are. And you kind of have to assume that your personal information is just out there, and move forward as though it is, which is just pretty crappy. But that's, I don't know. Anyway, oh well. Yeah. So back to the footage. As you have been watching, I'm just moving lots of trees. A couple of these are actually some of the bigger trees that I've taken down. And in fact, one of them was so far the biggest tree, the biggest alder anyway, that I've taken down from this area. So it was definitely the first, or the most, somehow it was able to just get the most nutrients out of the ground or whatever. So at the moment, I'm just trying to make sure everything is leveled and smooth so that I can drive up and down and around as I need. That is the constant challenge of digging something out like this, is that you're just moving stuff around left and right, trying to get things where you want them. So now I'm going to take some chains and attach them to the bucket, and then I'll start dragging the trees off. And this guy right here, we're going to slow it down to real time for a minute, because apparently the canopy of the tree was bigger than I thought as well as the trunk, and that's a good 18 inches in diameter at the base. So it's a pretty big tree for only being 16 or so years old. I mean, it's possible that it started growing before they actually harvested, but somewhat unlikely. So I've got a pile off to the left here where I'm going to drag things, and I think it's this broken branch right there that decides it wants to snag on one of the legs, or well, I guess maybe not. I guess it's these branches here. So you know what, there, down we go. And then you get a good, shall we say, interesting view of one of the previously fallen trees in the canopy. It's a good thing it's a fairly rugged camera, so it's not something that I actually have to worry about. But I didn't notice that it fell over, to be honest, until I had put the tree off to the side, and then what I do is drag it up alongside the ones I've already got there, and then undo the chains, and then pull around to the side of it, and at an angle kind of push it up, so it builds a pretty big pile. And at some point in the not too distant future now, basically as soon as I finish leveling this site and getting a little bit of a driveway to the west and access to where the septic is slated to go, then we'll actually come back through and cut all of these into manageable log sizes. Sorry. But we'll get back to it. I was just trying to think, like, specifically where in the process this particular spot is, and it's just changed so much that I actually couldn't tell you. And you know, this is kind of towards the beginning of where the house will actually sit, but it's just changed so much between then and where I've got to. Like for tonight, when I go out and start working, I've got a bunch of smaller trees that I need to clear out of the way, and I'll start sloping the driveway to try and build that to where it's a nice smooth transition up the hill. And I've got to widen that for the trailer access as they bring the home in. These are good sized trees. I mean, most of them are all in the 50 to 70 foot tall range. So there's a lot of lumber there actually. I'm looking forward to being able to mill that, and I'll probably do most of it in slightly over 1 inch thick slabs, and then let them dry for a while, and then I might do some of them as 2 inch to actually do like furniture, and maybe even some as 4 inch for some of the thickest stuff. And like on the thicker, bigger trees, I'll probably do my best to box in the pith. So I'll build. Yeah, that one didn't move the way that I wanted it to, but you know, it is what it is. I figured before it got too dark, I needed to focus on getting this stump out. This was a stump from an old, I believe it's a cherry tree. I think it would have been a lot firmer if it had been an oak, and it was pretty crumbly, and based on just how rich the redness is, I mean, it might have been an alder, because like the alder bark is pretty red, but the alder meat, the actual wood is pretty light colored. But I sure stirred up a lot of termite nests. Termites were flying around all over as I tore this out. This ended up being a fairly big stump actually, and especially this upper spot side of it there, where it just didn't want to come out. So the trick is you just keep changing your angle and unburying parts of the roots, so that when you hit another part of the root, it has enough flexibility that it can actually break. All of this decomposed material is going to make for some amazing plant growth when it gets back, when it starts to grow back up. Most of this was just pushed off to the side to build out the south side a little bit, create a little bit more of a ledge, and then eventually we'll come back through with some like wildflower and grass blends. And you can see there was one of the main roots that broke off the actual stump, and then there's the stump itself. It was big enough that it didn't really want to move too much. But yeah, I ended up just using the front loader to push that off to the side, and then just bury it in dirt again. Make sure everything is smoothed out as much as possible every time I make a pass over it. But that's where the footage ends for today, so as always, thank you for watching. God bless you and yours, and stay safe out there.